Hello everybody. Today we're going to be going over AP World History Unit 1. So this is covering global tapestry from circa 1200 to circa 1450. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's look at our Unit 1 overview. So some of our major religions were Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Then we had developments in topic 1, which was East Asia. Topic 2, Dar al-Islam. Topic 3, South and Southeast Asia. Fourth topic was the Americas. The fifth topic was Africa. And our final sixth topic was Europe. We also we're going to talk about our time period, which is 1200 to 1450 circa. It's really important to know this, especially when it's time for your SAQs and FAQs. Okay, so, sorry, not FAQs, LEQs. So let's go ahead, some things, I don't know why it says announcements, but we're going to be going over state building, innovations in technology, effects on religion on society, and a lot more, so stay tuned. This is going to be a quick recap, so it's not going to cover everything you need to know. It's going to cover the major things. So Unit 1, we have some of our definitions. So an empirical bureaucracy is our first one. And this is a Chinese organization where appointed officials are to enforce policies over the empire. And then we have our civil service exam, which is an exam that assessed people to see if they were qualified for civil service positions. And some of these positions include the federal government and state government. So let's talk about this. So East Asia included China, Korea, and Japan. So East Asia is not the same thing as South Asia or Southeast Asia. South Asia would be India, Southeast Asia would be more the Philippines. So some religions in East Asia, the major one was Confucianism, and then there was Taoism and Buddhism present. And then our Chinese dynasty started with the Han Dynasty. We went to the Sui Dynasty, the Tang Dynasty, and then finally the Song Dynasty. So there were a lot of cultural traditions in China, and these led over time caused Buddhism and its beliefs to shape East Asia's way of life. So China followed philosophies, which Confucianism was. Confucianism was a philosophy. It was a way of life. And it spread really fast, Buddhism. Buddhism spread really fast because of its large influence. And it showed us how to, not us, it showed East Asia how to do trade. Okay, so our religions. Confucianism was a philosophy founded by Confucius around 6th century BCE in China. So it was a social harmony through moral example. So it showed the importance of education and family. It was huge on others or on their ancestors. Then we had Taoism, which was founded by Lao Tzu, and this was anywhere between the 6th and 3rd century BCE, and it was found in China. And its traditions were through the withdrawal from the world and to focus on nature, simple living, and striving. And lastly, we have Buddhism. And Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha Gautama in 6th century BCE. And unlike Confucianism and Taoism, Buddhism was founded in India. And it was focused on suffering, which was caused by the desire of attachment. And it wanted to end suffering. It believed that suffering could be ended by the modest and moral living and meditation. Okay, so our next is our technological innovations like champa rice and steel and iron. So in the developments of East Asia, economy of the Song dynasty flourished. And so the productive capacity expanded through networks and innovation, agriculture, and manufacturing. Some innovations included the transportation, steel, iron production, champa rice. And so producers, exchangers, and consumers played a very important role in this. And then with the discovery of black earth, which was coal, China had the greatest manufacturing in the world at that time. And the Song also promoted the growth of the economy. They built roads and irrigation canals like the Great Canal. So just a quick definition, two quick definitions. Innovation is a new method, idea, products. It's something new. And the economy is the system of production and consumption. So let's talk about champa rice. Champa rice was so important. It was such an important innovation because it was drought resistant and it grew very quickly. So champa rice ultimately caused a food surplus in China, which caused a huge population increase in China. Think about it. You get more food, so more people are fed, which means they can feed more people. So they were prone to have more kids. So earlier I brought up producers, exchangers, and consumers. So producers, they make something. And then the exchangers, they trade that something. And then the consumers, they buy and use that something. So for example, let's talk about champa rice. So the producers make the champa rice, the exchangers trade it across, and then the consumers eat that champa rice. And so that pretty much covers 1.1. Let's go on to 1.2. So some definitions here were the House of Islam, Dar al-Islam, which is the House of Islam. The Mongols, who were the most powerful conquerors from Central Asia. The Seljuk Empire, which was the biggest empire. And the Abbasid Caliphate. It was an Arab dynasty that had ruled over the Islamic world till about 1258. So Islam at this time had split into two. The first side were the Sunnis, and the second side were the Shias. So they split over who would rule after the death of their leader Muhammad. So why did they exactly split up? So the Sunnis believed that people should choose their leader. They should be able to choose their new leader after Muhammad's death. And the Shias believed that the leader should be a descendant of Muhammad. And because of this, the two split Islam. So then Islam became split into two sections. Okay, so systems and beliefs really affected society here. And so the system of belief and their practices affected their society by affecting their way of life. So an example of this is Dar al-Islam. So before 900 CE, it was only located in the Middle East, North Africa, and the southern part of Western Europe. After 900 CE, it had spread to East and West Africa, Eastern Europe, Northern India, and Southeast Asia. The Mongols then ended the Seljuk rule, and this resulted in changes of law and power. And then we have their innovations. So the religion Islam was so incredibly popular, and it was spread through mostly merchants and the Turkish, but we'll get to that in a second. It was so incredibly popular, and one of the reasons was that it was so innovative. They kept coming up with new things. The Muslims were so smart. They created algebra, the pharmacy, hospitals and clinics, surgical centers, astronomy, and they translated Greek literature. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the rise of the Islamic states because that's so close to this innovations. So this talks a little bit more about how the Turkish states and the Abbasid Caliphate broke up and stuff, so I'm going to get into that a little bit. So the causes of the rise of the Islamic states was the expansion through military force. Islam also expanded through merchants on trade routes and missionaries. So the effect of this is the quick spreading of Islam across the Middle East and South Asia. The Turkish states grew as the Abbasid Caliphate broke up. They used slave soldiers to maintain their power, and the Islamic states used methods of warfare to maintain their power. So merchants weren't the only way Islam spread, is basically what that's trying to tell us, everything I just said to sum that up. They spread through the Turkish states and military force. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about governance. So the Turkish states developed innovative methods of rule, slave soldiers, and the Turkish states emerged as the Abbasid Caliphate disintegrated. You know what I mean? They broke up and used slave soldiers to maintain their power. And the Turkish states used slave soldiers to expand their territory. They used methods of warfare that originated among the nomadic people to expand and maintain their power. And that sums up Dar al-Islam topic 1.2. Let's move on to topic 1.3. So 1.3, we're going to talk about first Sufism, which was the religious practice within Islam, and it mostly focused on the purification and spirituality of Islam, finally. The Delhi Sultanate was the northern part of India that was Muslim-led. The Delhi Sultanate was Muslim-led, and I'm not going to pronounce that, we're going to call it the V Empire. The V Empire was the southern part of India, and it was Hindu-led. So the Delhi, the north, was Muslim-led, and the south, the V Empire, was Hindu-led. That's so incredibly important. Oh, sorry. So the systems of beliefs really affected the South and Southeast Asia society. So the various belief systems and practices of South and Southeast Asia affected society over time because they practiced many religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam. Hindus, for example, believed in a caste system, whereas Muslims believed everybody was equal. So the caste system, the Hindus believed that somebody was at the top, somebody was at the bottom, and there were a whole bunch of people in the middle. However, the Muslims believed that every single person that was Muslim was equal. The Turkish invaders were also spreading Islam to South Asia, but it wasn't as popular as it was in Southeast Asia. The mixture of religion led to Sufism. So some Hindus started to develop and practice the teachings of emotional and spiritual life. What did this call it? Buddhism, or the Bhakti movement. This was so popular because it didn't discriminate against anybody. And the Buddhist monasticism was also important in Buddhism, which was basically involves a life of discipline, commentating, and the following teachings of the Buddha. So Buddhism. And then we go into cultures. So Hinduism's believed in a caste system. We talked about this. Buddhism begins in Southeast Asia, becomes popular everywhere. Everybody loved it. The Turkish invaders spread Islam, but it didn't become very popular in South Asia. It was more popular in Southeast Asia. And religious syncretism is so important because it's the mixture of religions that led to new practices, which is Sufism. And now we talk about how Islam spreads. Okay, so various states of South and Southeast Asia developed and maintained power by creating new things or making existing things better. They also showed diversity since they had several religions being practiced there: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. The states in South and Southeast Asia also developed and maintained power by spreading religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. So not only did they adopt that language, they practiced that language, and then they spread that religion. Why did I say language? Say that again. They practiced, they believed in that language, and then they spread. I keep saying language. Religion. They practice that religion and they spread that religion. And that was 1.3 for you. 1.4, this is our state change. So states in the Americas developed and changed using religion to govern. For example, the Aztecs used human sacrifice. The Aztecs believed in human sacrifice. The Americas also participated in long-distance trade, and they did this through the Indian road system. It was hard for the Americas to expand geographically because of the mountains like the Andes and other rainforests. The societies created states to organize resources and enforce laws. And these states also used religion to get power, and they preserved their power by keeping the economy running and the wealth flowing in. Some state systems in the Americas were Mayan states, city-states, Mexica, Inca, Chaco, Mesa Verde, and Chokia. And that was 1.4. Quick recap. 1.5, this has developments in Africa. So states in Africa developed and changed over time through the spread of the religion Islam into northern Africa. We're hearing this word again. What does this tell you? Islam was huge at this time. Some states, however, had already developed, like Kilwa in the east and Zimbabwe in the south. States in Africa also traded with Europe and the Middle East. Great Zimbabwe prospered through trade and gold, and Zimbabwe also participated in coastal trade through the Indian Ocean trade. It had lots of gold through Manza, who was arguably the richest person ever. Ethiopia prospered through the spread of Islam, and the Husa kingdoms were the 7 states that were connected through religion. It had no centralized government, and it participated in trade to the trans-Saharan trade. And that's 1.5 for you. These ones are super small. The first 1 to 3 were pretty important. These are still important. They're just not as big topics. The other ones were packed. So 1.6, this is developments in Europe. So the beliefs and practices of the predominant religions in Europe affected European societies by causing the separation in Europe. There was conflict between the religions practiced there, the Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and the Muslims. There was also conflict between the Roman Catholics and Muslims There were also conflicted between, there was also conflict between the Christians and the Jews during the Black Plague, which is infection spread mostly by fleas and rodents on other animals. So, we have Christianity. And Christianity was the Roman Catholics in Western Europe and the Eastern Orthodox in Eastern Europe. Then we have Islam, and this was mostly in the Iberian Peninsula, which is today Spain and Portugal. And there was some in southeastern Europe. Judaism was all throughout Europe, but especially in Al-Andalus and in Eastern and Southern Europe. It was not really a majority anywhere, it was just kind of everywhere. And there was conflicts between these religions. So the Roman Catholics and the Muslims, there was conflict there in the Arabian Peninsula. There's conflict between the Eastern Orthodox and the Muslims in the Southern Europe. There was conflict between Crusades, so this is Muslims, and the Roman Catholics in the Middle East, Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox in Eastern Europe, and Roman Catholics and Jews in Eastern Europe. And then fourth, we have between Christians and Jews during the Black Plague. Lots and lots and lots of conflict. You'd never get over the conflict. And lastly, we have feudalism. This was the caste system of Europe. So the kings gave something to the lords, and the lords gave something back to the kings. The lords gave something to the serfs, and the serfs gave something back to the lords. So everybody kind of needed everybody there. But the kings were higher up, and the serfs were below them. So for example, the lords gave protection to the serfs, and in return the serfs were forced to work. It wasn't slavery, but it was still labor. And then we have agriculture. So agriculture affected the social organization in Europe by making people who farm land at the bottom of the caste system and people who own the land at the top of the caste system. So each level of the caste system offers something to the other person, or other level. And that, my friends, is the end of Unit 1. Quick recap. Thanks guys for tuning in. I'll see you in my next video.